Greetings, friends. Some people say that if you talk about race, if you're pointing out race, that there are these biological, cultural people groups in the world, that doing so is divisive. Talking about race, pointing out race, is forming barriers between us, and it's moving us in a negative direction. Now, I don't quite understand, because I'm just pointing out reality. The world is divided. There are people groups. Why does divided have a negative connotation? Maybe there are things about division which are negative, but division is part of creation. God created a myriad of different things, and He created mankind, and maybe it's too bad that we aren't united under one common culture, and that could perhaps be a people group too, eventually, maybe in some sense. But why would culture, on the face of it, be negative? I'm sure these people who don't like talk of race are fine with culture, at least ostensibly, I imagine. Oh, culture, that's fine. But race? That's so negative. But really, the more I think about it, culture and race are pretty much inextricable, because it's not really even primarily about biology. The biology is the sorting, is us seeing the sorting of the spirit of the people. Race is fundamentally a spirit, and it's not something that you should worship, like in paganism, like worship the spirit of whatever, the God of your people, when it's not the God of all creation, the Almighty. That would be idolatry. But you should respect the spirit of the people. The spirit of the people is not an illusion. It is a real thing. It is in the hierarchy of reality. And just like any city, there's a spirit of every city. And a forest has a spirit. So does a people have a spirit. This is what race really is. And the culture is downstream from that, in a sense, because when I say spirit, it's something that we're all partaking. And I don't mean in the Christian sense of a God. I mean, this is different. This is people are participating through our being in recreating the culture and recreating the physical body of the people at the same time. There might be some imperfect mirrorings of the Trinity in how we do this. But this is not, I'm not describing God here, but I'm describing an imperfect mirroring of how this plays out in the human world on Earth. So race itself is wonderful. I mean, I think that there are all kinds of beautiful peoples around the world, and not obviously not all cultures participate in the fullness of the truth of Jesus Christ, but we all have certainly many positive things, and there are all kinds of different strengths and talents and abilities, and even you might say beauty about different peoples. Now, not in the relative sense that beauty is not completely relative. It is related to objective standards. But I mean, just things that are wonderful and good in themselves, just like creation itself is good. Everything that God created is good. Even if maybe not in the sense of, did He literally create the races? I don't know. I mean, from as far as I know, we all came from Adam and Eve, as far as I know, but there have been these different people groups back as far as the scriptures talk about these things. The different families, they went off and they did certain things, and yeah, maybe there were certain ill consequences passed down to certain peoples at certain times for things that happened in the past, but we're all equal under God. So I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about race. It's a natural thing. It would be funny if someone became obsessed with race, like that became the primary prism through which they viewed the world. I would regard that as a little odd, but I would regard it as equally odd to not ever raise these questions and see this dimension of reality. It's just one dimension of reality amongst many others. That's why I would say white nationalism is silly. Nationalism based on any race and not under the Christian paradigm, to me, is is nonsensical and cannot stand the test of time because it's not in the proper relation. But at the same time, there are people groups, there is a spirit of the people which sorts the people, which the people participate in, that has many dimensions in culture and biology, and I think it's silly to try and extricate one or the other, like, oh, it's biology, it's this, it's that. There are all these different things tied up in a matrix. And that's why if you try to deconstruct some races, like a lot of people are fine to deconstruct the white race, but then, oh, other races exist, then it's not problematic for them somehow, because if you're going to deconstruct one or two races, then the whole idea of the race itself starts to come tumbling down. So I don't think that's something I could entertain. But for example, yeah, there's like I was seeing people from like just on the internet, like YouTube channels, and it's like an Italian guy or it's just like an English guy who and they've got dark eyes and dark hair, and the facial features are so different, and it's like, well, this is not a Nordic looking person. But is this person white? And it's like, well, yeah, they're kind of white. So is this now problematic for the white race? Like, oh, because I got so confused when I see some Mediterranean people, and it's like, well, they're kind of like closer to the Middle East in some ways of how they look. So what is the white thing? And then you just start, yeah, it's more complicated. But none of this would cause me to question, like, that there is a whiteness. You do see the nuance, and this is not a problem, because I don't have a problem admitting that the race is metaphysical. It's a metaphysical thing. So you will, by definition, if you try to zero in on the white race, or the black race, or the Asian race, or whatever, different people groups of the world, when you try to zero in on the borders, in many cases, you will just be continuously zooming in, and you won't find any clear boundary. This phenomenon happens with a lot of reality. A lot of our metaphysical concepts, dignity, honor, love, justice, kinship, the nation itself, which is related to race, but like, where is Canada? Is Canada right where this, on this inch of the border at Windsor, at this inch of the bridge? That's Canada now. The soil, that's Canada. Look, a lot of reality is like this. Maybe all of reality. If you try to capture something with a microscope, you won't see it. Now, I'm fully willing to admit that this is an argument I lose against Darwinism. I still think Darwinism is silly. But to be fair, like, they can claim evolution as a metaphysical concept, but they're materialists, so they don't like to think in those terms anyways. They think that they can have their physical mechanism. But no, it does come to a metaphysical religious outlook. So, because race is a spirit which informs culture and biology and spiritual life, we can find a white person that is black. You know what I mean? Like a white person that is from afar and up close, oh, it's a white person, but then they open their mouth, or that the way they're dressed, and you're just astonished. This is a white person who's black. I would just say that you could find this example with other races. Now, maybe not all races are so loosely defined. Like, you might say, oh, well, the Han Chinese, they're very well defined. The Irish were enslaved by the English, and white people have been killing white people, and so why would race be real? And look, the Chinese and the Japanese have a history of fighting each other and committing atrocities. And yet, you're saying they're all Asians? Well, yeah, I mean, it's a shame, and we live in a fallen world. People groups have committed fratricide against each other. But you're just still within the concept of the family. The family started fighting within itself, so therefore the family was never real. That's basically what you're saying. White people have killed other white people, so the white people thing's not real. Japan and China, they're opposed. So the race is just divisive. I mean, come on. Like, that's such a bad argument. The family was fighting itself, so the family was never real? So that's what you're saying. It's absurd. Hasta luego, amigos.